for joining today. We are super excited about this topic of planning. It is our last webinar of 2020, and what a year it's been. Pre-COVID, during COVID, not quite post-COVID yet, but we made it to 1 year, so
Woo!
super excited. It,
Cheers. Cheers.
it's outside the door. I left it.
I know.
I can give a Diet Coke. Cheers. We want to thank all of our supporters, our friends, our family. We've made a lot of new relationships this year that we are
Mhm.
super excited to continue to explore and are very excited for what's going to happen in 2021 when life gets back to its new normal. So we have a few new people on today that have not come to our previous webinars. So just a quick spiel about Joint Pivot. Both Julie and myself, we love to solve problems. We love to understand root cause. We love to create unique solutions, right, at the pivot point to help companies get to their next steps, their next accomplishments, achieve their next results, um, and achieve things that they couldn't do beforehand,
Mhm.
before bringing in some new tips and tricks and expertise and experience. And so we can perform services. We can help you in areas where you don't have the expertise, or we can train your people, right, to build up their skill set so they can repeatedly deliver in something new, right? So you bring us in, we help out, and then we exit or move on to something else with your
Mhm.
company. And things that we do, as mentioned, you can outsource to us, right? If you have a project that needs to be done ASAP and you don't have the manpower, call us. It's something we're able to jump in very quickly. We can fill gaps in skills. We can help you learn something new. But we also love speaking and doing webinars and teaching. And we, um, in a good way, have over 20 years of experience each to share knowledge and what good looks like at different types of companies, from manufacturing operations, supply chain, HR. But we also love meeting people, speaking, conferences, et cetera, because we get to continually build our knowledge and bring back more skills and stuff to share with companies. So today we're talking about planning. And I'd be lying, absolutely lying, if I said this is easy to put together. And which makes me laugh because it's all about planning and there should have been like a proper to-do list and
Should have a plan to plan.
I know. And it just seems so simple. And so while attempting to do this, I actually hit a lot of roadblocks. Procrastination, prioritization, something else came up, procrastination. Um, yeah, I know, right? I'm just being honest. And I thought, let me just start to gather current state. I even went out to social media and had some questions for people. But yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But before I keep going, I want to make a disclaimer that I've had past coworkers, and I'm going to call them bosses, sometimes leaders, say that I plan too much, that I said the word process too much. And I'm like, how is that possible? I'm like, we're delivering on results faster, spending less money with less mistakes. Like, this should be a good thing. And I've
Mhm.
learned a lot from that because we're going to talk about how to sell planning in organizations where people aren't ready for it. And it all comes into that. And maybe I did say the word plan or process too much, but is there an element of over planning? Possibly, right? When you're building too much waste into a process. But that's where lessons learned comes in and measurements. And is there ever a under planning? Can you ever under plan?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a
Yep.
fine line, right, in between some of those, Venn diagrams possibly. And so sometimes we just have to start running, right, and plan in parallel because we want people to achieve results while learning and doing, especially when it comes to smaller businesses and startups. And so that's something that Julie and I have been able to learn over the last couple of years, which has been exciting. How do we get people results
Mhm.
while still planning, to continue on that roadmap? And the second thing to think about too is to learn from your mistakes. Learn while you are running, where you are in an organization where you are being challenged. Learn while you're running, right? So next time or at your next, major milestone, you have time to bake in some of those ideas that you learned and some of those things so you can continue to have a smoother roadmap as you move forward. So, a couple disclaimers before we get going. Um, so, why are we talking about this? Well, planning is valuable, right? We all need to do it. We all love it, sometimes more than others. There's different methods. There's different ways to think about it, and there's different ways to overcome. And so we're going to talk about when we plan, like the occasions, different methods that we use, and possibly when to use them, but then also how to overcome roadblocks. And
Mhm.
roadblocks come in the form of people, time, money, constraints, skill set, you might be your own roadblock. So we'll talk about that and how to overcome that.
I love that you mentioned that too then, because it's not one size fits all. Like there's different methods to do it, and it's not you're not going to see, everything as a nail always getting a hammer in those cases. Plans are not the same. There's a
Mhm.
matching the complexity of the plan to the complexity of the problem 100%.
Yep, exactly. And so taking that all into account is so big. And so again, I'm not going to call it procrastinating. I'm going to call it maybe gathering data to put together this training, assemble everything from my past. I obviously thought about everything that goes on in our lives.
Hmm.
First of all, for everyone on the phone, I want them to pat themselves on the back because you planned and you joined and you did. So kudos,
Yay!
um, win, right? I know it sounds simple,
High five.
but it is something. Right? And then I also want to think about the definition, right? It's the act or process of making or carrying out plans.
Hmm.
Again, to Julie's point, the act of carrying something out is different to everyone,
Hmm.
right? Are you building a deck or are you implementing a new major car model? It's also the establishment of goals, policies, and procedures for a social or economic unit. Now, there's a lot of definitions out there, but I thought that was fascinating. A unit, which to me is a deliverable, right? A result, something you're trying to give to something like a cake
Hmm.
or cookies or a deck or um, so planning isn't just for work, it's in your entire life, right? When you get out of bed, what are you going to make for dinner? And so here are a few slides from Julie and me and some of our accomplishments, right? Like we both planned weddings. I'm figuring out how to plan at work at home with kids on Zoom calls, which is so
It's
fun.
its own kind of plan.
Exactly. A corn maze. I did a corn maze with my kids in September. And I have to say, I'm like, do I really want to do this? And it was a beautiful day. We started and we tried without the map. We were walking in circles. Plan failed. So another dad and I pulled out our phones, and there's like a JPEG of the picture of the cornfield to get out. And it was so fun to watch these kids. We were just telling them, okay, at the next, fork in the road, go right or left. And it was amazing. It was such a fun experience, and I think it was all about expectations. I had mediocre expectations of this corn maze, and our experience far exceeded it, right? It was super cool. Highly recommend a corn maze at least once in your life using the map. Julie redid her kitchen a couple years ago, right? This is a huge planning job. There's also a lot of decisions here. Do you subcontract? Do you project manage it yourself? Do you outsource everything? Is it a hodgepodge of it? Do you bring in a plumber, an electrician? Where are you buying your new cabinets, right? And if you kind of picking up on something, there's a theme in planning, and that's a lot of decisions. I never really thought about it. I think I just did it, right? Because I,
Hmm.
I like to get things done. So I just make decisions and go. But there's a lot of decisions to be made in the act of planning.
And
Uh,
this one was a good example, Jen, because this plan from the upper left-hand picture all the way down to what it looks like in the final right, that was over about 5 years of a time period there. So we started off with what it looked like. And first I replaced the backsplash. And then a year later, I replaced the cabinets. And then when you talk about, the people who don't want to use the word plan or don't want to tackle something because they
yeah,
think it's too big.
yes.
So you kind of have to hide it until you wear that person down. That's what we did with this kitchen. So it was like little plans at a time. I had a whole plan in my head and I knew how this was all going to work out. My husband didn't know that, and don't tell him if you see him, but it was one little piece at a time so that we could get it moved and eventually get our plan underway.
Right. And that's sometimes how you have to do it,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes major rollouts are far more challenging. What
Hmm.
what are some major milestones you could deliver along the way and still get instant gratification, right?
Hmm.
Because you did change something. So
Yep.
yes, and for those, Julie's kitchen is stunning. FYI. So
Come on over.
It worked.
Wear your mask.
I'll wear a mask. Um, and so I mentioned earlier, I was kind of all over the place when starting to collect this because I have lots of trainings on planning when it comes to project management activity, right? Or process improvement or problem solving.
Hmm.
But combining all of that into the act of planning. And so um, I read a lot, I asked a lot of questions, but I took a lot of notice of what I was doing every day. And I kept trying to do this PowerPoint. I sent a lot of emails to myself when I had a good idea. Um, like one or two word emails in my inbox. And it definitely helped, right? I had a lot of stuff to collect to finally hunker down. I just had to block off time. I went out to social media to ask some questions. I figured, oh, this maybe I'll have an aha moment and something will like just spawn off amazingness to I should start documenting. The answer is no, not so much. However, I had to plan what I was going to be asking out on social media. And Julie and I do have a marketing spreadsheet where we put the what we're going to post, why we're going to post it, and she does a much better job. We're supposed to go in and put how many people interacted and engagements, et cetera. So we can learn, right? When should we post? What do people like? What platform, et cetera. Anywho, here are some of the questions that I asked out there. Again, no crystal ball, which I already know does not exist, but I was hoping for something, in the world of the internet. But do you consider yourself a planner? My first question. And I got about 75% yes. No one said no, but then I also remember who I probably networked with, right? Most people would either not admit it, they'd rather just skip by it, or they're going to say yes. But I got a lot of depends, right? Are you consider yourself a planner? Depends. Absolutely. It depends on the situation, right? There's times where I don't plan very much, right? You just kind of either go with the flow or figure it out. We'll touch on that when it comes to European vacations or traveling. Um, what's your favorite excuse to avoid planning? um, I had a lot of those in
That
my
one cracks me up because my husband saw that when it came through because obviously he follows their social media
yeah.
and he knows that I hate putting laundry away. It's like my least favorite thing to do ever.
Mhm.
And he caught me putting laundry away a couple weeks ago and he's like, "What are you avoiding?" Because he knew he's like, it's not my favorite excuse, but he knows it's like the last thing I do because I'm delaying doing something.
Right. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And what I heard, well, it takes too long,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes because those around us don't want us to plan, it
Hmm.
gives us an excuse to not do it. And that's when it comes to roadblocks. We've got stakeholders at
Yep.
businesses and companies that are like, just start going, Jen. Just go. Right. Well, I don't need to have a kickoff meeting in this. And you're like, these are really good practices that lead to
Hmm.
success. We need to do it. And does planning lead to success? And one person chimed in and they said, well, good execution helps. And we could probably go around in circles. Is execution part of planning? Right? Is it the plan being implemented? Who knows? But it's all a part of this world of getting stuff done one way or another. So which leads me to why do we plan, right? Why do we plan, right? Does it help ensure success, right? My opinion is that it's definitely going to have a positive impact
Hmm.
on it. It helps us realize if we actually need additional resources, right? So, what are some bottlenecks or constraints along the way? For one, I know Julie would agree. It's definitely something so we know how long something's going to take,
Hmm.
right? Especially when we look back on things in the past, we can say, oh, yeah, yeah, we can start plugging in some lead times. Um, Another big one, too, is obviously to help with budgeting for various reasons, but to communicate with leaders, right? If I actually have a plan or something documented, I don't have to give them all the details, but I can at least start to paint the picture of what the journey is going to be, right? So it's a method to help share with people. And then my favorite is predictable outcomes, right? If you've been to any of our webinars or any of our trainings, we talk a lot about predictable outcomes. That's what we want. And if you're not planning any bit of it or making decisions in the beginning, how do you know what you're going to get? Right? Chance? I don't know. There's no crystal balls. I've
Hmm.
learned my lesson on that one. So feel free to raise your hand. I know you're not on camera, but has anyone ever expected to plan something when they don't even know a goal or an expectation? Where leaders and bosses aren't actually telling you what the end's supposed to be.
I was
Right.
gonna say, even right now, when you start thinking about, okay, well, what is your goal for Thanksgiving planning, Christmas planning? I don't even know what the environment's going to be, so don't ask. My mom's like, put together a list. I'm like,
I don't
no.
know. I don't know. Yeah, but then that leads you to a lot of decisions, right?
Yeah.
And like data gathering, collecting stuff to help you get there, which is essentially a
Hmm.
plan. Um, Something else that was very daunting when I was putting everything on paper was think of everything that goes on in our lives, right? There's stuff nonstop, and there's probably even more going on out there that are not it's not on the slide.
Hmm.
But there's different thoughts on planning. There's strategic planning, right? Big picture, long term. Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years, right? It doesn't have to be only for your business. It can also be for your life. And Julie and I have a webinar on applying the X matrix and Hoshin methodology to your actual personal life, right? To figure out how you're going to get where you want to be in a couple
Hmm.
years. There's operational planning, right? There's tactical, short term, just getting something done. And then there's contingency planning, right? Risk mitigation. The often, and I'm not going to say almost always, but high frequency of not being included in project plans, right? No one wants to talk about risk mitigation. That's not fun. No one wants to think things are going to fail because they view this as probably over planning. Well, Jen, why are we going to get in a room for 3 hours with all the major people to talk about what might go wrong? Well, because in the long run, those 3 hours could save us 18 hours and a lot of money. And again, it's not until you have that experience and things go wrong do people start to understand why. Um, I also view that some a company I used to work for had people who would set fires on purpose so they could come in and be the superhero, right? So why would they want to do any kind of risk mitigation? Because they want to come in and save the day, which is a whole other training out there.
Oh, those people with the solutions looking for a problem.
Yep. But when you think about contingency planning, also thinking about yourself as a leader, how are you in your head? What's your plan of action when a curveball is thrown at you? Is it freak out and run and scream? Or is it stay calm, stay cool, ask some questions, get the root cause, get the right team, put some immediate steps in place, right? That's a plan, right? And having that in your head ready to deal with is amazing. And we talked about that this summer with our leadership webinar.
Mhm.
Um, Being ready to deal with curveballs that are thrown at you in a cool, calm, collective, and effective manner. We've done some cool webinars, Julie.
We have.
And everything requires some sort of plan when you're looking for a desired result,
Hmm.
whether you're baking a cake, putting on a party, socially distant party. How are you going to get there? And so take a look at what's on this page here. There's a lot of required decisions that have to be made, right? That go into actually doing things. If you look at recognition, right? I need to plan for recognition of my team. What am I going to recognize? Where am I going to do it? Am I going to give something? Right? Those all come into the steps of how I'm actually going to be able to give some sort of recognition. Um, Landscaping, right? Landscaping is something I want to, if I say it, maybe I'll do it. I want to tackle in 2021. Like Julie, we've done a little bit, but we've taken a couple years off, and now I need to do something where I have bushes in front of my house, so in the winter it doesn't look completely bare because my perennials, right, my hostas and stuff go away. Um, a lot of decisions and a lot of planning, right? A lot of data to collect. What grows well in Michigan? What flowers easily and when? Is there a way I can stage flowering in the spring, summer, and then fall? Right? It would be amazing. Um, but again, it's a plan to figure that out.
Hmm.
And so for the leaders on this phone call and people who have a team, look at this, especially the life aspect of the slide. People on your team are facing this all the time, right? And now they've got obviously COVID thrown in on them. They've got kids at home. They who hopefully they don't have any sick friends and family that they have to take care of, but there's a lot.
Right.
So how are you recognizing those impacts to their life that are taking up time and energy, and respecting it and then helping them at work, giving them the tools or the skills to do something better and faster, or giving them some time to deal with, right, what needs to be done outside of work so they don't have to worry about work for a day or two. Just get that stuff done so when they come back to work, they can focus, right? Julie, you talk a lot about
Hmm.
that in our remote leadership,
Absolutely.
right? Letting people tackle those times.
Mhm.
So, and another big thing here is setting clear goals and painting the vision and what you expect from your team. So they know, hopefully, when they start to stray and get off course, oh, is this going to hit the goals that, my leader asked me about or told me about? And if the answer is no, they can get back on and you're all on the same page. Um, so huge. There's a lot here. It's a lot. And so thinking about work and life and priorities, and thinking about how your job or your maturity has changed over the course of your career, right? And thinking about what kind of planner are you? Has it changed? Right? Obviously, as I got more and more experience, where I started my life at Toyota, which was beyond planners, like that's, you could argue, some people say they plan too much, but they roll out cars really, really well because of it. My planning attributes have changed, right? My styles changed. I went to companies that did not like the word process, right? Or they did not want us to
Mhm.
plan. So I had to alter how I did things, but I still had to stick to my guns because I knew what good looked like. And Julie, thoughts on how to, when you're in an organization where they're kind of forcing you out of your norm of what good is, how do you how do
Yeah. So that one's always interesting because I was just writing in our chat box here as to what type of planner I was. And I'm definitely a strategic planner, like that I am almost like aggressive when it comes to planning things at work. And I've realized because I was around engineers so much of my life, because I'm a mechanical engineer myself,
you
that they appreciated that. And like they didn't view that as necessarily crazy. And then in certain cases where people get a little terrified by that, I realize I have to calm the crazy down. And I don't stop doing the crazy. I just hide the crazy a little bit. So I have my master plan. I know what's going on. My strategic plan is out there. I know every step that we have to take, but
Mhm.
I definitely step it back in those situations where I know, okay, I need to back this down. And here's the very high level. And I try and put myself in somebody else's shoes in those cases to see, and I watch them to see what their reactions are to, like, do I want more? Do they want more? And if they want more, of course I have it. But I start off small. It's the pureeing of the vegetables concept with them. They don't know they're doing it.
Exactly, and unfortunately, especially when you get to a certain point in your career and you're dealing with leaders who are trying to block you,
Yeah.
it's all you can do.
Hmm.
Painful, painful, but it is what it is, right? So instead of complaining, let's figure out strategies to deal with it. Um, and another way to always stick to your guns is to remember your own expectations,
Hmm.
right? Remember what success feels like when things go really well. And I don't know if it's on this slide, I might be bringing it up later on. It's slightly painful when things go really well. There
Hmm.
was no fires, it was on time, it was on budget, and you get a pat on your back, like, "Great, do it again." And it's like, "I just worked for 3 years on this, and that's all?" Well, it could be a lot worse, right? You don't want
Yeah.
that. Man. But that's where you can take, like, reports, and I did this at a company where we had a lot of small projects. How many were on time? How
Hmm.
many were under budget? How many had no issues or low amount of issues? And brag about that, the collective of all of them. And that's when you can start. You might have to be helping yourself and others celebrate, but there's a chance to get some recognition. And then you can probably squeeze in some, why did it go so well? And to Julie's point,
Yeah.
they might not want to hear all the whys. Give them a couple. Right, make them realize what you actually did.
They should know. No. And I always tell Jen, I tell people quite often that you don't understand or appreciate the value of a great project manager or a great project plan until you deal with somebody who's awesome at it, and then you deal with somebody who's not.
Yeah,
Because those of us who are great at putting together project plans, we're more prepared. We know that the experience is better for somebody. Like if let's say you're going on vacation, people know when they're coming with me on vacation. We don't plan everything out. Like I'm not like, here's what we're doing every single hour, but logistics are all taken care of. Everything is all on board. So you really just need to show up with your toothbrush and your suitcase and have a good time, and that's it. Like you just get to relax at that point, versus somebody who's not planned, where it's like all three of you are on separate flights. Like who knows what taxi you're taking, when you're getting, where are we going? Oh my gosh, we're at different hotels. Like, it's a hot mess. So until you don't have somebody who does that, like, you never necessarily realize that the value of having a good planner.
100%. My next examples on this slide were going on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So are you like my dad who takes riverboat cruises through Europe because it's pretty much set up? You're getting dropped off at ports, you can go do a tour, you come back, and lunch and dinner it is. Or you like my in-laws, who has my dad book their travel 100% when they do things together, because they're like, sweet, Jerry's got it. I don't have to do anything, right? So they lucked out, me marrying their son. They know my dad is their travel agent. But then there's different types of planners when it comes to different expectations, right? So kind of to
Yeah.
Julie's point, when you're backpacking through a country, right? Um, you're flying to Europe on a one-way ticket, and you're going to spend 2 months out there, and you just need to make it from one side to the other, and you're going to fly home, right? And luckily now with the internet and our phones, you can book everything along the way and you can go with the flow, right? 10 years ago, if you said, would I ever do that? My answer would be absolutely not. Like, there is no way. I would have every day, at least where we're going to be and how we're going to get there, and a hotel reservation ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's world, you can get away with that because we have tools that help us, right? So planning strategies can actually change because of technology. Um, I once actually went to Argentina on a whim. A friend quit her job and said, I'm going to Argentina in 2 weeks. Who's coming? And I did. And this was early 2000s. And that was not something I would normally do. And we had the best time. There was not a lot of planning going on, a lot of wine drinking, um, and we had a lot of meat. I had no idea that beef was so big in Argentina, but it is. Now I know. We had a fantastic time. Go with the flow. And sometimes me being an over planner or planning too much and wanting to control, I have to step back and just go with the flow,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure I have a good experience as I don't bother everyone along the way. Yeah.
Been there, done that. Was that person.
Yeah. And sometimes it's so hard to sit back and watch other people plan, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just have to and go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so with planning, right, and thinking about how you're going to get whatever you're going to get, comes down to a lot of feelings and expectations. What is your expectation of vacation, right? Is it to have a fully stacked itinerary? Is it to go with the flow? Do you want to have a schedule? Who are you traveling with? Right? What do they like to do? Maybe you do make decisions when you wake up in the morning. Um, and what does planning actually make you feel? And now that's kind of a silly question. However, when you think about the end result and what you want to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about all of those inputs to get that desired result. And so taking a look at some of these questions on here, you can probably tell we have a lot of project management in us. Um, but we also have a lot of tools to make sure things go well. Questions, templates, right? Different, standard project management stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we've created, because our overall goal is to get people across a bridge to their desired destination, right? And sometimes it looks different for different organizations. It's no big deal, but we want to have that good experience and that good result and exceed expectations, when we cross that bridge. And so again, in my course of procrastinating, finally writing this up, I probably shouldn't say that, but I have to be honest.
You're always going to get the truth with us.
I'll be very honest with everyone. Thinking a lot about expectations and results and experiences. We invite people for outdoor play dates on Friday after school is done at like 3 o'clock. Turns into happy hour on the driveway. It's great. We always invite someone who has kids the same age as ours so they can play outside and keep each other company. Um, and I invited people over that we hadn't seen in a while. And instead of ordering pizza, which was what we normally do because it
Mm-hmm.
turns out to being 5 and 6 and kids are hungry, I'm like, hey, why don't I just make like taco dinner? We'll do grilled chicken, some vegetables, um, in the cast iron, nachos, quesadillas, etc. And I really didn't have any fixings for this. I had whatever I had in my house, and I'm like, huh, but I wanted the experience for our friends to come over, not have to bring anything besides drinks, whatever they chose to drink,
Mm-hmm.
and then not have to help me because I didn't want them in the house, right? And they didn't want to come in the house. And I wanted my husband, who was at work, to come home and not have to do anything either, right? That was the experience I was going for. And I have no idea how I made it happen, but between like 2 p.m. and 4 o'clock when they arrived, everything was ready to go. I did more in those 2 hours than I think I've ever done in my entire life. Chicken was pounded and seasoned. So when we grilled it, it was like the most moist chicken. It was like it was insane. Um, and I could keep going, but I wanted that experience and the results. And it ended, and everyone was like, "Jen, that was so easy." Husband's like, "Wow, we should have people often more, over more often." I'm like, "Yes,
Hmm.
Andy, you didn't do anything." But I that way. That's what I wanted, and it worked. Again, thinking about the experience and the results is what I focused on how to get there. So think about that as translating that to work projects or things in your own life, right? What's the feeling you want when it's done? And use that. Now, you might have people in your life who are preventing you from planning, right?
Oh, before you go off that one, Jen,
Yeah.
just a quick thing to hit on there. When you talk about what does planning make you feel,
Hmm.
I had a really big breakthrough with one of my clients that I was doing some personal coaching for because she hates planning. Like it's just she hates it. She does not want to do it. But she has to plan. Like she's an independent contractor. She's starting her own company and hates planning. I'm like, this is not going to work out well. So we talked through like what types of planning does she actually like to do? And we found out that she loves planning vacations. And she finds it exciting because she likes to research the places that she's going. She likes to look at restaurants. She likes to look at the reviews and everything and read through that. So we took her business plan and we made it into an itinerary.
Okay.
So it was basically stops on her vacation. Like her end goal was like see the world, but it was basically to build out her company. But the stops along the way were like getting her business plan done, filing for her LLC. Like those were trips that she was planning on her itinerary, and like her passengers were her clients. And she was so cute. She sent me a picture one day and she had her little beach hat on and she was drinking a mojito at the beach while doing her plan. And I was like, listen, if that's what it takes to get you to enjoy planning, then by all means go ahead and do it. So figure out what types of planning you actually like to do and then try and figure out how do you make it more like that.
That's amazing.
It's
So we
fun.
should put palm trees and suns on our thing.
Probably not like, well, we don't have any snow yet, but the snow outside your window is not necessarily moving me forward.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna use that story because
Hmm.
it again, it's the same process.
Yeah.
It's different things along the way because the goal's
Hmm.
different. Um, 100%. And so when it comes to planning, right, this person's roadblock
Yeah.
was probably a lot of not knowing where to start, thinking that they didn't have the ability, but in reality they did. You just had to translate it for them, right, to get them over. And so
Hmm.
thinking about your roadblocks, sometimes a lot of emotions here, a lot of preconceived notions that are probably not true. I will say that there is an active motivation to get going, right? And sometimes you just got to do it, right? Deadlines help. Scheduling this on November 16th at 2 o'clock was a huge motivator to get going because it's like I can't cancel. Um, but understanding your roadblock, why? Why is
Hmm.
it? Right? You could find why, some root cause analysis of why you can't get over the hump of starting, right? Waiting till the stars aligned, it's never going to happen. I know a big one here is viewing mistakes as failures from the past, which is
Hmm.
terrible, right? Projects that may have gone completely awry, or you lost control, or someone swooped in and just took over and it was just so miserable for you. It is what it is. Learn from it. Remember what happened and figure out a different way or a way to adjust both your behavior
Hmm.
and the way you approach these things, so that doesn't happen again. Um, and lots of times we don't start planning because we have no idea where to start, right? Or we don't know what the result is, that we're going for. My taco dinner, right? Sounds silly. I knew exactly what I wanted. And therefore, I could do a lot of different inputs to make sure I got there. Um, Looking at strategies to overcome, right, your roadblocks, right? One of my favorites is working backwards, right? Understanding what that end goal that you want to achieve is, right? And then start to understand what that input is to get there. And then working backwards, almost like a reverse process map, to get there, to visualize all of the inputs.
And part of that one too, Jen, when you're talking about working backwards, it reminded me of a meeting I had, gosh, probably 5 years ago,
Mhm.
where I was working with the team, working backwards on creating a project plan. And I was like, okay, when do you need it due by? And they're like, November 15th. And I was like, okay, so how long does that task take? And they're like, 2 weeks. And I was like, all right, so you need to start it on like November 1st. And they're like, no, 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 November 10th is fine. And I was like, oh, okay, let's stop. If it takes you 2 weeks to work on or 2 weeks to do and you need it by November 15th, you have to back it out. So when you're thinking backwards, make sure you're building in that work time as well.
Good point. Good point. And with that, remember your project that didn't go well,
Yeah.
right? Didn't go well. Building those thoughts in. Obviously, we love lessons learned. How do you incorporate lessons
What?
so to not repeat these things?
Hmm.
And again, think of what you want to accomplish, right? How can you use that as motivation? Let's see, other strategies, especially if you have a team to help get stuff done. What competencies do they need, right, to
Hmm.
help with planning or for them to actually get a project across the finish line, right? Competencies are a combination of skills, ability, and experience. What do they need? What are they
Hmm.
missing, right? Is that preventing things from getting done? Is that forcing you to do a lot more, right? When you can't delegate to your team because they don't know what to do or how to do it. Um, and so getting you over that hump, getting you to the finish line. I do have a small sales pitch, right, for Julie and I. Just put my sales hat on. And sometimes, in all seriousness, you do a third party or an outside person, or even someone from a different function coming in to ask questions, light a fire, cut through the BS is what you need to get over that hump, to get through that roadblock. Obviously, we do that a lot with people. We did it for companies we worked at, and we do it for companies we work with now. Um, and for those of you on the phone who have worked with us, we're going to get straight to the point and we're going to get stuff done, right?
Hmm.
Because that's what we want to do. And we're going to ask the challenging questions and we're going to make you define goals and expectations. And sometimes that's challenging for sometimes person in the organization to challenge leadership like that. But that's stuff that we like to do. And we've been doing it for a while. Um, we also want to help people understand what great looks like, right? Because
Hmm.
we want to hit that goal too. And if we don't understand what your good looks like or great, we're not going to be on the same journey. And we certainly don't want to fall off. So that was my sales spiel. We will be sending out some of these one pagers in our follow up, just so you can take a look at some of our offerings and what we're doing. Um, so how do we? So really, now what? Right? What do you want to get at the end? Right? Do you want to repeat the last win or loss? Right? You probably want to repeat the last win and continue building upon that. Um, so the biggest thing is, right, getting out of your head and go, right? Even if there's a leader in front of you blocking your success, right? Again, what I said earlier, has anyone ever said, gosh, I wish we planned less? No, just start, right? What decisions, right? Starting at the end, what's the experience, expectations, and results? And then motivate. Is it just starting a checklist, right? Make checklist, check. Even if that's your first one, right?
I love that.
Going. That's what I do every Saturday morning when I do a grocery list. Make list, check. Um, Visualize the path, right? So a brain dump, right? Do you
Hmm.
just need to put sticky notes, ideas all over to try and figure out what's going to build success into that plan? Team mapping. This is really getting your team and mapping that out. Use their expertise. Ask
Hmm.
them questions. Get them to do some of the work, right? Um, Prioritizing, really understand the voice of the customer, right? We probably want to understand the voice of the customer even more earlier in all of this, so we sure that
Hmm.
the plan hits there, but reconfirming it. And I will say that arrows in here could point all around. This perfectly circular. There's kind of like some loops and some backtracks, more like a choose your own adventure. Defining who, what, where, when, how, right? Build an action tracker, build your raid log, whatever it needs to be, get it documented so people are on the same page with you. Incorporating some sort of risk mitigation, whether it's a full out FEMA, some contingency planning, or just some questions for us to
Hmm.
ask. What could go wrong here, right? And when you get to the people who don't want to spend 3 hours in a full, FEMA discussion, maybe you open each meeting with, hey, what could go wrong? right? And use that.
Mhm.
And you're kind of in stealth mode getting this information behind the scenes. And sometimes you have to do that. Um, and then plan to win, right? Do you need a status at a glance? That's what SAG is, to show people what the journey is. Do you need regular meetings? Obviously, we know with project management, team meetings are key. Standard work for leader, that's what Swiffle is. That's a tool to help leaders stay on track, right? Doing repetitive activities ongoing, but also helping them understand when they're involved in strategic initiatives to get things done. Um, more tools and templates. And the biggest thing to say is try something, right? If you don't try something, you're never going to know what's going to work. Um, so
It cracks me up, Jen, because I look at this list, and obviously, I like to plan for when we go on vacations.
yeah,
Um, and then we just got back from Florida like about a month ago. And I just look at this where it's like decisions decide if we were going to go. Yes, we decided we were going to go. Motivate myself to actually sit down and do the planning. And I'm like, I poured myself a very large glass of wine and I got out of my own head and I got ready to go.
right.
Then I visualize the path. I'm like, okay, we're going to be near the beach. We're going to go golfing. Like, I know what it is that we want to be able to go do. We just need to execute on it.
Hmm.
Then I had to prioritize because I was like, we only have this many days. So, how many days are we going to golf? How many days are we going to go fishing? How many days are we going to lay by the pool? Then it was like, okay, who, what, where, why, when? Like, when are we eating? Where are we eating? Who are we going with? Like, what's going on? Because obviously, we're trying to do this while socially distant and make sure that everything is planned out so we can choose our own risk, which is the risk mitigation aspect of it. And then it was like, all right, so this is all done. It's on our calendar. We had a list of ready to go. And it sounds very regimented. And I promise it was not like, this is what we're doing. But at least every day we knew like today was a golf day or today was a beach day or today was like a pool day because we were both trying to work our work schedules around this as well because we went for a longer period of time because we were working in between it as well. And that's exactly the process that we took.
Amazing.
I know.
Yes, exactly. And like Julie said, it's applicable to anything,
Mhm.
right? So yes, fantastic, Julie.
I try.
I love it. And so now you're excited, right? You have a plan. You've got something, you've gotten out of your head. You've got some motivation to keep going, and you've gotten past your procrastination. But now what? Right? Now you're up against these leaders who sometimes might be preventing you from getting something done, right? Or questioning why you're spending so much time. And so again, we've mentioned it throughout, right? Maybe you don't share everything with them. You just let them know the major milestones.
Mhm.
They don't have to know your entire Gantt chart or your work breakdown structure, right? They just maybe need to know some milestones. I'm working with someone right now who I created not a super detailed report. He's like, Jen, I want to be able to look at it every day and see green, yellow, red. And if there's red, there better be something that tells me to go ask questions.
Mhm.
And that's it. And I'm like, oh, I like this. This is much better. It's much easier for me. I was trying to over communicate, but again, it was new. So,
Mhm.
but again, I had to ask those questions, right, to understand the voice of the customer in that case. But again, how do we want to make them feel? We want them to get excited, right? They're along with the journey too. But let's make sure they know the results that we're hitting and
Right.
say, I'm not going to tell you the details and bore you because I know you don't like them. Just let me run. Stay behind the curtain.
Mhm.
Understand your audience.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't need to see the crazy. I just need to know what that is behind the scenes.
Correct. And then we have planning at its finest. This was strangely in 2019, both the joint pivot employees got new decks. Um, Mine wasn't nearly as cool as this. I had stuff sitting on my backyard and driveway for a couple months due to back orders, but
Yeah, so this was actually our deck in our backyard, and we decided to take off all of the deck, resurface everything, and put down new boards. And for those of you who know my husband, he does not like a mess at all. So when you start something, you finish something, and he cannot stand, like, if that stuff would have been sitting in our driveway, he would have lost his damn mind. Um, so this actually worked out pretty well where one weekend we ripped up all of the deck boards and this whole picture that you see here is one day. That is one day from start in the morning until finish that we got this done. And if you think I'm the planner, he's probably like worse than I am because he had it down to every single board that we put down. Our tack time was about 4 minutes and I think like 30 some seconds. And I stopped at one point because there was a very good song that came on Pandora and I started dancing and I got like, nope. You must not, because if you start doing this, we will not get this deck done today. So we did actually get it all done in one day. I had planned out every single piece and length of board that we needed, and we actually finished well under our 10% overage budget. So we came in right around where we planned. So it was a good plan that we put in place.
I know, I love it. This is
Welcome to the crazy.
and I include all the detail, right? Because
Hmm.
there's a lot that went into it, but execution went off very well.
Hmm.
Um, so what what now, right? What are you going to do next? I You all joined us today, but what are you going to do with it, right?
Hmm.
We always want to leave you with something, right? To apply to your day, to your life. Obviously, we'll send you the PowerPoint. We'll send you those one pagers that we shared with. Um, I hope you got some items to help you overcome, right, roadblocks, right?
Hmm.
The steps that you're going to take to actually get some things done, even if it is checklist, check, done. But overall, we really want you to focus on the first two questions. Better define the experience, both the
Hmm.
end experience that you want people to have, but also the journey that you're on. Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be chaotic? Or is it going to be of communication and result sharing along the way and people being on board, right? It's work for you to do that, but it makes everything so much more cohesive.
Hmm.
But then also confirm the expected results, both for yourself, but whoever you might be delivering the project for. Um, Again, because if you don't understand the results and the plan you're making, who knows if you're going to hit the mark. Obviously, opportunity to bring in third parties to help, but and start with a checklist. But I have to say, in all of my, I won't say procrastination, I'm just saying data collection phase. Um, I really the whole the decisions, the experience, expectations, and results like played a lot in any type of plan that I was working on. And so that was kind of a cool revelation, realization for me over the last couple weeks. So with that, obviously we said it's our 1 year anniversary. We've got some specials running, again, sales hat. Some really cool energy leadership index with Julie. If you want to hear more about that, reach out to myself or her. I can put you in touch with her to hear more about that. It's super cool process that you learn a lot about
Oh,
yourself.
yes.
Uh,
You actually might find out why you don't like planning in there.
yeah, how you deal with things,
Had
what
a
you do.
couple of those.
Yes. When there's some goofy situations, how do you handle it? Stress,
Hmm.
etc. It's very insightful. And the other one is planning, obviously. A couple hours to help you get over that hump, figure out what the next couple months are going to be. Um, so feel free to reach out, talk more about that. And lastly, a huge thank you to obviously our family um, to help us with our first year and have patience. And my husband wonders why I don't handle my kids when they're home. I have work to do, Andy. Um,
Right?
so, but call us, email us, text us. We're happy to discuss your needs, answer questions, um, help you get over that hump of potential roadblock, and help you figure out your next customized solutions specific to your needs. So we'll be sending all the information out. We'll send you a link to the video. And thank you all for joining.
You got
This
it.
was fun to put together.
Fun. Just procrastinated a little bit. Learned a lot about ourselves.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
There you go. Perfect.
So with that being said, thank you all for joining and have a wonderful day.